The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's going on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Bold fantasy predictions for the second half of the season, MLB trade rumors, and Major League Baseball news, and the ever so popular ads and drops. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball!
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by Belly Up Fantasy Sports and Righteous Felon Jerky. I'm your host, Vince Stover, and I am joined, as I am almost every week, by the senior fantasy baseball writer from BellyUpFantasySports.com, the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
We are doing good, and as I was speaking with Chase earlier today, I was talking about how we're underneath this the heat dome here, and but it was raining earlier. It brought the temperatures down, so it's almost like it's Christmas morning here right now. So we'll take it. We're happy, and so life is good.
I'll tell you, Kev, it's crazy. We've been through this last month or so of kind of a dead period in sports with the exception of baseball, and now all of a sudden it's starting to pick up. College football is almost here. NFL camps are reporting soon. Of course, baseball is now in the stretch run to go along with other things going on. So a lot of excitement in the sports world. Of course, baseball still has center stage for another couple weeks before football officially kicks off. But it should be a fun stretch run, I guess, here when you get to the second half or past the All-Star break of baseball. Let's start. Well, we'll come back to that, I guess, in a moment. But we'll go ahead and get to our first segment of the day. That is the Fantasy Burner segment. Fantasy Burner segment presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com. All your fantasy needs right there at BellyUpFantasySports.com. NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball, of course, is all covered there. You want to head over there, catch some articles and things going on at the Belly Up Fantasy world. Today's Fantasy Burner segment, we are talking bold fantasy predictions for the second half. I don't know how bold my stuff is today, Kevin, but I feel like it's bold at the very least. Okay. I don't know if everybody else will agree or not. But we'll let you kick this one off, Kevin. What's a bold fantasy prediction for the second half of the baseball season?
We'll see how bold we are. All right, but my first prediction for baseball and fantasy is that the days of Justin Verlander being a ace, they're over.
Okay.
They are over. I don't know if you saw the other day on Friday, he pitched against the Dodgers. He only gave up 2 hits, which is great, but he walked 6. And that's a huge red flag to me for a guy who, with the stature of somebody like Justin Verlander, to walk 6 guys in a single game, and he did that in just 5 innings.
Wow.
And so if we're scoring at home, that's 9 walks in a 2-start period. That is extremely that's flammable to me. And so Justin Verlander, of course, is about 100% roster. And so if I have him, which I do not in any league that I'm in, because we pretty much talked about him before the season started as being a guy I want nothing to do with. But if you happen to have him, I would look to trade him before his value completely craters. The Mets are they're going down the drain, and the only thing that could possibly save this is if they trade Justin Verlander. I have not heard that. Max Scherzer, I've heard rumors about, but I do not see Justin Verlander as being anything other than a good starting pitcher, if that. So I'm looking to move him as soon as I can.
Yeah, we're gonna see a lot happen in the next 2 weeks, I think. With players both good and bad fantasy wise. There's going to be guys that had good starts to the season they're going to have bad ends to the season or reverse that around, whatever it may be. And I don't disagree with you on Verlander. The Mets are a scary situation right now. They're not good in real baseball, and their pitching has not been great in fantasy baseball either. I agree with you. I think that's an interesting take. I think it's bold enough for this show.
Okay.
The Verlander's ace days are over. Now he is what, 41 years old,
He's
something like that.
at least 40.
Yeah.
40, and then Scherzer's 39. So the Mets, they made a mistake signing both of those guys. I thought it was a mistake right from the start. And
Yeah.
so it just wasn't going to work long term at all. And it's not even working this season. So
yeah, I didn't think it was going to go as bad as it's gone. You go back to the early episodes of this show this year, we talked about this, and we both agreed that signing an old guy with already an old guy on the roster didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. We didn't think it would go great. That's an area we can say we were right in. That and Jacob deGrom, we both said couldn't draft deGrom at the value in which he was listed, and for good reason. And obviously he's done for the year, so that worked out too. So we were right on with older pitchers, I'd say.
that's right. So if you have an older pitcher, you might reconsider.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to talk about value at the same time, right? It's not just
Right.
that they're
And
older,
value
but
is where,
these guys were taken way
value
too
is
high.
way too high, and value is what you have to. Well, maybe not so much value, but you need. Let's say your team's kind of right now, and you're needing that push to make the playoff run. Justin Verlander is not the guy to have at the top of that list to bring you to the fantasy promised land.
Yeah, if you miss on a guy in the top 3 rounds, it hurts your fantasy team.
It does.
If you miss on him in round 16, 17, it's not as big a deal. But you miss on him in the top 3 rounds, it's going to hurt you. And Verlander was being taken up there. I've got a pitching take as well. Mine is a little bit more positive, and it's on Corbin Burnes, a guy that you and I were both high on. You drafted in one league. I have acquired in another league. I think Corbin Burnes will be the top fantasy pitcher from today till the end of the season. Fantasy-wise, I think Burnes is going to show out the rest of this year. So you see signs of him making that turn. He's getting more comfortable. The issues of the offseason are further away now, and this is a team that's going to make a playoff push. And so I think Corbin Burnes is going to step up. We saw it against Cincinnati this week. He came out, he shined. He almost passed out in the 5th inning.
I heard about that.
He stuck around. Yeah, he finished the 6th. He had 13 strikeouts, 11 or 13
in his last inning. So he found that inner strength.
Yeah,
and so I'm with you on him.
We know Burnes is talented, and
he leads my staff in my other leagues. So
there you go. Yeah, we know he's talented. He's not been as good as he's been in the past this year, but I think that turn is coming. I think the stretch run, Corbin Burnes can be depended on as the top pitcher from here until the playoffs. Okay. What else you got? What's another take you got?
All right. So my second prediction also concerns your Milwaukee Brewers.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So we know that shortstop is a very deep position in baseball, fantasy baseball, whatever baseball you want to talk about. But it is my prediction here that your Milwaukee Brewers, Willy Adames, will be the top fantasy shortstop in the second half. And so, he's starting to fire up a little bit. I got it right here. He's hitting the ball. He had 2 games in a row with 2 hits, and he's climbed that average up to a robust 212, which is nothing to get excited about, of course. But he hit 3 home runs in 2 days. So he's starting to look like the guy because he has 30 home run power.
Yeah.
And so I think out of all the shortstops that you could have on your team, and right now he's at 70% owned, so he's probably rostered just about everywhere. But if you happen to have him, he is the guy that I would want at my shortstop position. I think the Brewers kicked it off well. They swept, as we talked earlier. And so Willy Adames, A+ shortstop fantasy player to me.
I'd be happy with that. I've got him in all my leagues. I was all in on the Willie Adames train, and you're right. His power has started to appear again. His defense is very good, by the way, which doesn't help fantasy. But he's not in any risk of losing playing time or anything like that. And even when he's not in the field, he's DHing most of the time too. So yeah, Adames is doing his part. I like that. I hope it's true. I'd say I'd probably lean more in the top 5 or 6 shortstops, but I'd love for it to be a top shortstop. I like that bold prediction.
We're trying to be bold up in here.
Yes, that's right.
My bold take is number 1 fantasy shortstop in the second half, Willie Adames.
I like it. This one might be a little cooler than that, but a man whose average draft position is 121. He's been playing more like a guy getting drafted in the 190s. My bold prediction is that MJ Melendez will actually start to live up to his draft value in the second half of the season.
Yeah. That would be great. That would be great if he could do that.
Melendez came in with all this hype, and the only reason why he had the hype was because of his position multi-position availability. If he was simply a catcher, he probably wouldn't have had the hype that he had, but he had the hype coming in. And he actually dropped lower in our league than I thought he would draft-wise. But nonetheless, I think Melendez, again, is he going to be the top catcher? That's not what I'm saying. But I think that Melendez is going to actually finally come up to his draft value and be a hopeful fantasy player here in the second half of the season.
All right. So that would be awesome if he could do that. My third prediction involves more than one player. We've seen that rookie pitchers have made significant, contributions to many baseball teams in real life and in fantasy. But it is my prediction that not a single of them, not one single rookie pitcher will be producing come fantasy playoff time.
Oh.
And the reason why I say that is because the way baseball is played today, we've already seen it with like Yuri Perez sent down to the minor. You're going to see these, whether we're talking about Abbott or Wu or the Miller brothers or whomever, they will be shut down by their teams or supremely curtailed, or might be in the boat, whatever it is, but their contributions will be absent come playoff time. So, and I've got some of these guys in my leagues, so I'm going to have to pay attention to this myself. And anytime you start to hear, well, let's say Wu, especially for teams that are not in the playoff run, as the Mariners may not be, they will have no real reason to pitch to any of these guys. So they're going to shut them down, and then your pitching staff is going to be severely limited. So you want to make sure that you have some other plans in place for these guys, because they're just simply not going to be there when the playoffs come.
Interesting. That's a very interesting take, Kev. I like the way you're thinking on that for sure. And I hope it's not true, because I've got a lot of those guys.
I've got some too, and Gavin Williams of Cleveland. We could go on and on with these guys, and so these guys are they're gonna pitch them, but they're not gonna pitch them till their arms fall off. This is not 1976 with Mark Fedrich, the Bird, pitching 27 complete games or whatever it was. He did insane number that year. They're freaking out when they hit not even 100 innings right now.
Yeah.
And so these guys, especially if you're not in the playoff race, have no reason. They're not going to pitch them. They're going to say, okay, you sit over there and learn, and we'll see you next year.
Interesting. Okay. My last take is also multiplayer involved. We're thinking on the same page.
We're flying. This plane is flying right here.
One traded player, meaning traded in Major League Baseball, will help win fantasy leagues this year. Someone who gets moved to a different team, who right now may not be massively impactful, is going to have a major impact for champions all across fantasy baseball. Let me give you a couple names. Tim Anderson. I'm on this train, and I think I might be the only one on this train.
Yeah, because my feet are firmly planted on the ground when it comes to the
Sure.
Anderson.
And I understand why, but Anderson gets moved, and when he gets moved, it's going to be put in a situation where things are going to be better. He's going to find his old self, and all of a sudden, this guy that's sitting on the waiver wire and has been all season for good reason is going to shine and look and help a team win a championship. How about this name? It's a popular name. It's a big name, but hasn't been great this year. Juan Soto. His name has been popping up in the trade market recently. Again, San Diego is just a dumpster fire. Tatis has been great fantasy-wise. But if Juan Soto gets moved, again, I think it kickstarts something in his brain, and I think he helps the team win championships. I'll give you a couple more quick ones. Ryan Helmsley from St. Louis, a relief pitcher, a guy that's not getting a lot of great opportunities in St. Louis. I think he's even injured right now. But watch out if he gets moved. Relievers get moved a lot this time of year. He gets moved into the right situation, all of a sudden he's getting saves.
Texas Rangers in particular are looking for relief pitchers.
Yep. And then the last one I'll give you is a guy that I'm not a fan of, that I really don't want on my fantasy team, but it's a personal thing. He has great fantasy stats. It's Stroman with the Cubs. The chance that he gets moved to a better situation as well is looking highly likely. He gets put into a situation like Arizona. He gets put into a situation like New York. He gets put into a situation like Texas. Everything changes, and Stroman all of a sudden becomes a more valuable piece to your fantasy team, because not only is he getting the strikeouts, now he's going to be getting the wins. Things are going to come along with it. And so it may not even be those four players, but I'm telling you, someone's going to get traded, and it's going to make a massive fantasy impact for a team who has a guy sitting on their roster that's been mediocre so far this year, or a guy that's even on the waiver wire right now, like Tim Anderson, who gets moved to a better situation. Next thing you know, you're winning your fantasy championship as a result, and large point because of what they're doing.
All right, so there we have it.
All right, there's our Fantasy Burners segment for the day. Coming up next is the Call to the Pin. And before I hit the video for our Call to the Pin, I want to thank, and I need to look him up. I'll get you after the video. But we had a listener reach out and saying something nice about the show. But he also commented that during this next transition, the ringing noise is obnoxiously loud. And I have not yet had a chance to fix it. I promise I will do my best to do that in the coming week. But it's time for our Call to the Pin. And our Call to the Pin is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky.
So that wakes up people throughout the land. That's what.
Yeah. If you want the purest jerky in the game, you got to go straight to the source. And Righteous Felon has partnered with the best natural black Angus beef producers in the land to lock up supply and guarantee the best tasting, best textured, and freshest beef jerky on the market. Visit righteousfelon.com. Use promo code BELLYUP. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. And again, I want to say thank you to our listeners. We love to hear feedback, even when it is a good criticism. And you know what? I completely agreed with that comment as well. And so I appreciate, sorry, I'm trying to find the comment and I pushed the wrong thing. Anyways, sorry, I'm trying to find Josh Dietz. Thank you for that comment. And I promise I will fix it in the coming week, hopefully. Okay. Let's talk about baseball news. We're out of the All-Star break. We're in that stretch run now. Power rankings came out on bellyupsports.com this week. I feel like I was more detailed in why I had people where I had them this week as well. But you look at these teams right now, to me, it's the Braves versus everybody else. Am I crazy to think that way?
No, you're not crazy, but it just goes to show how crazy the game of baseball can be.
Yeah.
Because they're the best team. They're playing at home. White Sox are playing out the streak. And what happens? They go in there and win 2 out of 3 games.
Yeah.
Spencer Strider, which was unfortunate because he's my top starting pitcher. He lost yesterday.
Bryce Elder got smoked.
Bryce Elder, who I have as well, was really unfortunate. But that just goes to show Atlanta has not won anything. So if you're a fan of one of the other teams, don't be, crying in your cereal just yet, because the Braves haven't won anything.
Yeah, no one has, right?
Right.
I mean, at
No
this
one
point,
has done it, and we've seen that in recent, history. The Dodgers, I could bring them up as, I would rather not, but they've won 100 games, over 106 games, whatever, and stuff like that. Hadn't won. The Mariners won 100 and what was it, 16 games 20 years ago. Didn't even make it to the World Series. So there's lots of baseball still to be played. So I'm looking forward to some of these, all these races, and all of a sudden the NL West is really hopping.
yeah.
And so there's a lot to look forward to when it comes to the game of baseball.
Yeah, I agree. I think the East is one. I think the Central won't be that much fun, the NL Central. But I think the AL West, the NL East, the NL West, the AL East, and the AL Central could all be really fun battles as we come down the stretch here. Let's talk about the battle in the AL East. Those Tampa Bay Rays, who are just dominant and in control all season long, they're a game up on
One
Baltimore
game,
right now.
and they've won just 3 out of their last 10 games. Here comes the Baltimore Orioles, 8-2 out of their last 10. Here comes Toronto, which not really as big a threat right
Oh, I
now, but
disagree.
they've won 8 out of their last 10. Okay,
Yeah,
Toronto is a team I certainly believe will make the playoff,
I think they win
but
the division,
I
Kev.
can't see them winning their division. Okay,
I think they do. If I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was a betting man, I would put something and sprinkle a little pizza money on Toronto winning the division. Listen, Tampa's getting healthy. They're going to be fine. They're going to make the playoffs. They could win the division, no doubt. Baltimore, man, I just don't trust their pitching. That's where my fault is with Baltimore. Do they fix it?
I'm
Do they
coming
get someone in
around
the
on their
trade? Maybe
pitching.
they do.
I'm coming
Really?
around on their pitching. As Dean Kremer, if
Yeah. He had a good outing, no doubt about
he
that.
did, and he's not their top guy, so I
Right.
think their pitching is going to be all right. Their
I
bullpen
think they've got to
is
add, and I don't see Baltimore
they've got to
doing it,
add to
right?
the bullpen,
Yeah.
and so it's going to be real interesting what's going to happen with this, because we all a couple weeks, month ago, thought this division was all dead and done, but it is not. So
Yeah. I think, like I said, Tampa's getting healthy. They're going to have some pitchers back. They're going to straighten things out a little bit. Baltimore, Toronto, and Boston have all won 8 of their last 10. Baltimore's on an 8-game win streak. Toronto, a
yep,
4-game win streak. The Yankees are now
yep,
tied for last in the division. And listen, we understand with the Yankees, right? They have issues. No one would question that. They do have issues. I still trust them more than Boston. That being said, their pitching is atrocious, but they're a team that goes out and fixes that kind of stuff, right?
right. It's not just so that their pitching that really concerns me. It's their offense, strangely enough. Unless Aaron Judge can get back in there. They
Yeah,
went into Colorado, which should be the springboard to, 8, 10 runs, and it didn't happen.
yeah.
And so I have some real concerns about their offense right now. And so maybe they
Here's
could get
the
it
way I
straightened
look at
out.
it. Their offense cannot win games. They need pitching, right? In the
Right.
sense where there are teams who are putting up so many runs, there's going to be games where the offense wins it for them. The Yankees don't have that luxury right now. They are the lowest scoring team in the division.
That's right.
Right now, it's by like 14 runs, maybe something like that.
They're
16
plus
runs.
18,
Yeah.
according to what I'm looking here, plus 18. And everybody else, Boston's plus 26, Toronto 42, and Tampa is still plus at 156.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah. Tampa has scored. There's no question about that.
a lot
But
of
so
that
has Boston, though.
came in the first 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So,
Boston scored a ton of runs, but they've allowed the most in the division as well,
right.
which hurts them. So that's going to be obviously an interesting one we'll keep an eye on the whole time. The Central, Minnesota back on top. Cleveland took that right before the All-Star break, but Minnesota's back. 2.5 games up on Cleveland. I still trust Cleveland more than I do Minnesota, but it wouldn't take much for me to start believing in Minnesota either. They've got a pretty complete roster. I'm interested to see if they can make any kind of stretch run count for anything, because I'm not worried about Detroit, obviously Chicago, KC.
No, not worried about any of those. And I have an article out there where I talk about Kenta Maeda, and if he can be the guy that I think he can be, and Ober and Ryan, that's 3 starters that could be quality right there. So you can go pretty
Lopez
far
is going to be
got
there.
3 quality starters, and I think they do have that.
I like it. In the West, Texas is maintaining that lead, 3.5. Houston made a run there right before the All-Star break as well, and Texas had a rough stretch when they played each other before the All-Star break. But needless to say, this is I think a 2-man race. Seattle could still make the playoffs.
They could, but they're 8 games out.
Yeah,
they're not winning the division.
No,
not happening.
They're at 500. That's about 6 games back from the Yankees.
That's one of the biggest disappointments in the entire world of baseball to me, that Seattle's at 500 at this point.
Yeah, and then you throw in Los Angeles Angels right there with them as far as disappointments go. I mean, how embarrassing.
Yeah, it is. And I saw this graphic that there are like 2 teams that have not been above 500 at any, during the last, 3 or 4 years, something like that. But only one of them, the Kansas City Royals, don't have Shohei Ohtani and, Trout, 2 of the best players on their team. So Kansas City has an excuse. The Angels do not.
Kansas City has a World Series since the last time.
They have a World Series, and they went to back-to-back World Series.
Yeah.
They went to Game 7 in the World Series. They lost.
Yeah.
So they can hang their hat, for till the next, George Brett comes around, whatever. So they're set for, 2040 or so.
Listen, the Kansas City is a pitching staff away from being relevant. And it's really that simple. They've got enough young pieces in that offense.
They've got too many pitching staff that are already good in that starting rotation.
And that division is horrible.
And it's definitely winnable. So all you have to do is show up and win 85 games, 87 games. And you make the playoffs. And then, as we could see from last year, anything could happen.
Out in the NL West, the Dodgers back on top, 2 games up on San Fran, 2.5 on Arizona. I think this is going to be a race all the way through. But Arizona all of a sudden hit that rough patch, right? 4-game losing streak.
Yeah,
San Francisco and the Dodgers on a winning
streak. Not only not winning their division, they're in danger of not even making the playoffs.
Sure.
Right now. And so, we talked about it just last week. Arizona, the younger team, can they pull themselves out of it? Because they don't have the experience that the Giants have, that the Dodgers have to lean on. So we'll have to see what happens with them.
Yeah, they got, let's see here. They lost to the Pirates. They got swept, I think, by the Blue Jays. Yeah, swept by the Blue Jays. And now they got the Braves. That's an easy series.
Yeah, they got the Braves, and Zach Gallen couldn't stop the losing streak. I believe that was yesterday. And unfortunate once again for me, because that's my guy. So
Arizona's going to make an addition at the trade before or at the trade deadline. I'll be interested to see what they add, how much they add. I think they need to add 2 pitchers. We'll talk about that here. Actually, we can transition into that with the trade rumors kicking up and the things happening around the Major League Baseball world. I've got 4 teams that'll be sellers at the deadline with some names of guys that'll be sold. And I think Arizona, if they could snag a couple of these guys, could be turning themselves into a more legit threat than what they are currently, because they need pitching help as well. I'll start with that.
Go ahead.
I'll start with the Chicago White Sox. They got 2 pitchers on the market right now. Giolito and Dylan Cease are the 2 pitchers. They also have Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, and Tim Anderson. Lance Lynn's a possibility too. I heard his name pop up for St. Louis. Not that St. Louis is trying to win this year, but as a future kind of next year kind of a thing.
Lance Lynn is not a young guy, so no, I'm not.
No, he's not. But Chicago's a team. They're not good. They should be selling, and they have talent to sell. And I think you could see something go there. St. Louis is another team, Kev.
Yes,
now, listen, I'm going to name these guys, and you go, I don't want any of those guys. I understand, but let me explain. Jack Flaherty, Jordan Montgomery, Jordan Hicks.
I'll take Jordan Montgomery.
Okay. I would take Flaherty in the right situation. I think that you have to understand it's not working for him this year, clearly, in St. Louis, but change of scenery makes a difference. These guys get a new coach. They get one guy that sees something as they're scouting for trades that says, hey, man, if you just take your step a little longer, put your hand a little higher, whatever it is, something little, and they can make that adjustment, and all of a sudden the guy's back to where he was. Those St. Louis pitchers have not been great this year, but then all of these are only one-year guys. None of them have multi-year contracts on them, so whoever gets them, you're going to get them for relatively cheap, and you're going to get guys who have done something in the past. Now, St. Louis also has Ryan Helmsley, who we talked about earlier, relief pitcher, and outfielder Dylan Carlson, a guy that they'd be willing to move on as well, that can give some value at different places. None of these guys are going to be superstars this year, although I think Helmsley could be a crucial part of a World Series team. But a guy like Flaherty, so here's my thought. Arizona, if they could go out and get Dylan Cease and Jack Flaherty, okay, that bolsters their rotation drastically.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Because then they've got 4 quality starters on that team.
Yeah, and St. Louis is not going to get rid of Arenado. They're not going to get rid of Goldschmidt. They're not going to get rid of Paul Walker. They're not there. Is it Paul Walker? That's not right. Paul Walker's the actor. Walker. Now his name slipped me. But anyways, Jordan Walker. Thank you. And I said Paul Walker. I knew that wasn't right. Anyways, St. Louis is not going to get rid of any of their big pieces, but you got 3 pitchers on 1 year on their final year of their contracts. Dylan Carlson's a guy that they don't need, and then Ryan Helmsley. Relief pitchers get moved at this time of year as well. Chicago Cubs, 2 guys to keep an eye on with Chicago. Marcus Stroman, who is a hot commodity right now. And how about Cody Bellinger? He's not still the MVP Cody Bellinger of the past.
His name just dropped today. I'm sure it's been out there, but I heard it really dropped today. Cody Bellinger possibly targeted by the Houston Astros.
Okay. Oh, I like that fit.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's such a great fit offense or defensively over there in Houston, but that could make it work. Him next to now my brain went sideways.
that outfield, you talking about the outfield?
Yeah, the outfield. Their right fielder. I should know who he is, but
Tucker.
Yes, Tucker. Yeah. He's swinging the bat well, so you have him. And the only thing you need to be concerned about, because they're both left-handed hitters, and so you're going to need to, bridge that in some way. But if you can get both of those guys, I like that going down to Houston offensively. And as you mentioned, Stroman, and the name that you have not mentioned associated with him is his old team, and that would be the Toronto Blue Jays, are figuring prominently and possibly bringing him back up north.
Yeah.
And if they could get him, then they're really serious contenders up there in the AL East.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not a Stroman fan, but Stroman and the White Sox pitchers are the 3 that I would really focus in on right now.
Right. And Dylan Cease pitched today. He shut down the Atlanta Braves. And then they said on MLB Network saying, well, the White Sox says that Dylan Cease is not available. That's what I say, doo-doo. Yeah. Of course he's available. I wrote in my article that he's available. And so if I was to go for any – Dylan Cease would be the guy that would be at the very top of my list.
I'm with you.
And so whichever team he gets traded to, you have to buoy that up, if it's Arizona, wherever it might be. Dylan Cease, to me, is headed out of town.
Yeah.
Lucas Giolito, headed out of town. Lance Lynn, pack your bags because you're headed out of town, even though I wouldn't want him on my team.
Me neither. Yeah.
But all 3 of those guys are going to head out of town. The White Sox are going to get some major pieces back for all 3 of those guys. And so Chicago, if you're looking for pitching, is where you need to be camping out.
Pitching market's open in Chicago.
Pitching market wide open in the Windy City.
Let me give you one more team and some names on that team as well. New York Mets. I don't think the pitchers get moved. I think there's too much going on there. But Tommy Pham, who's had a decent season.
Tommy Pham, every time you see him, is coming up big, seems like.
Yeah. Brandon Nemo, who some people really like. Again, I think change of scenery would be good for him. Mark Hanna, who has proven in the past he can do stuff, maybe not as consistent as some of the other guys. And I even saw Starling Marte's name come up. Boy, if you get him into a contender, that gets me really excited from a fantasy perspective and a real baseball perspective.
You could turn him loose on the base path.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those guys on the Mets are going to be sellers, which just caps off the roadkill of a season that they've had.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys are interchangeable. They're like the same player except for Starling Marte.
Yeah.
But so if you can move some of those guys and get back some actual athletes in New York.
Because they're not going to get rid of Lindor. They're not going to get rid of Alonso. And I don't think the pitchers are going anywhere.
No. And so, Alonso, he's loved over there, and he's still relatively, new, relatively. And he gets people in butts and seats, as they say. And Lindor, and they signed him to a ridiculous contract.
Yeah.
But so he's stuck there. And so, so move some outfielders. You're not moving Justin Verlander. I can't see him moving Max Scherzer. I think they might try.
They would listen.
And
they would listen.
I'm sure they would. And
I think that offer that comes back for those guys is so minimal. It's just not worth it to move them.
Especially Justin Verlander. I mean, the guy's 40. He had an incredible year last year, but he's got an injury. He's been injured this very season. So you could shop him. I don't see anyone, sitting there going high-fiving themselves, they're going down to the wedding chapel with him. But
let me ask you this. Just a wild throw it out there, okay? Say San Diego is tired of Juan Soto. It's not done, and everybody's saying Yankees for Juan Soto, whatever. What if the Mets and San Diego do a deal where Juan Soto comes over for Verlander and Marte? Something like that. To me, that would be enough. I think Soto's better than Marte, obviously, and better than Verlander, obviously. But if you're going to lose them and you still want to make a run at the playoffs, it seems like a veteran pitcher like Verlander and a guy like Marte who can come over and fill in defensively, fill in offensively, to a different degree offensively than Soto, of course. But you've got other offensive guys there too. I don't know. Is that enough for Soto?
I'm thinking if I'm the Padres, I want Scherzer.
Yeah.
I want if you offer me Scherzer instead of Verlander in that deal,
100%.
Okay, let's sign it up. And Soto, it was nice knowing you, but go ahead and reserve your spot on the next plane to New York. We'll see you when we see you, and don't let the door hit you on the way out, because that has not gone well since he came there.
Yeah,
and it's 2 years now ago that this has happened, and it didn't work. The second half of that trade, it didn't work last year. It's not working this year, the first half. So if I can get Scherzer, I'm making that deal.
Yeah. Okay. That's our call to the pen. We got to get moving on. Go visit righteousfelon.com. Use that code BELLYUP. Get 15% off your purchase. It's now time for our Fantasy Focus. Fantasy Focus is presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com. Again, head on over, get all the latest and greatest fantasy advice and details. There's football stuff is kicking into full gear right now, rankings and different things going on. Of course, Major League Baseball news from Kevin Wilson and others, NBA stuff, NHL stuff as the time comes. Also, BellyUpFantasySports.com. Let's get to our ads and drops, Kevin. As that last segment went longer than I thought it would. Let's get into our ads first. I'll let you kick us off. Who do we need to add this week?
Okay, so a guy that probably not available because he's at 48% rostered, and but has really come alive. Let's see, he has 4 2-hit games this past week alone. That's Whit Merrifield of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Okay.
And so he's second base, he's outfield. And so if he's available, he's hitting home runs now. He's got his average up to 291. He's got 19 steals. And so if he's available, which in the other league that I am in, he is available, unbelievably enough, but he is. So, and he's a guy that I wrote an article just a couple weeks ago saying, hey, he's an all-star, so maybe you can use it to sell high. Well, forget that now.
Buy him.
Keep him on your team. Keep him on your team. Hold on. My honey. My mom. My mom's calling. Hang on one second here.
Okay. Well, I'll go on to mine now. You got a guy in Whit Merrifield who's highly owned, and I've got a guy also that we have recently talked about dropping, but it might be turning his way. Owned in 52% of leagues from the New York Yankees, Giancarlo Stanton. All of a sudden, hang on now. Hold on before you say no. 3 of the last 5 games, he scored 15 points, 9 points, and 10 points. In his last 5 appearances, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, and only 2 strikeouts. Those are the numbers that you want to see from Giancarlo Stanton. You're used to having 7 to 10 strikeouts in that same time frame, even if he has the home runs. Well, he's down to 2 strikeouts in 5 games to go with his 4 home runs, to go with his 9 RBIs. I'm telling you, you cannot sleep on guys like Giancarlo Stanton, guys who have a proven history of power in a fantasy league. That can come into fruition, and all of a sudden, if he's in a hot streak, those are the kind of guys you want on your team.
Okay, if I can counter.
Sure.
All right, so he's a guy, I don't want to give away my entire article, but I wrote about him in my article as well.
Okay.
And, that's before he went ballistic, but he went ballistic in Colorado. So you've got to put that into your thinking a little bit. And unfortunately for them, the plane has already taken off from Colorado and they're flying to Anaheim next, which the ball does not carry as well over there. So I'm not ready at all to climb aboard the Giancarlo, because I think I mentioned it in my article, that's fool's gold. I still think that it's true. So I'm not rushing out to add him. I could see why you would be excited maybe to get him. I'm not in that. I'm not in the fast lane on him just yet.
So he did have a good series in Colorado. They played Chicago at home before that as well, where he was having a good series as well. So I just, to me, he's the kind of guy that you can't sleep on. And if he starts getting hot, you got to jump on him, and you got to be ready to jump off. You don't need to have patience with him. If he starts to dip again, let him go immediately. But he's the kind of guy, I'm telling you, if he has another 2 games where he looks good, you could pick him up off of waivers now and then trade him and get something in return for him. I mean, to me, Stanton is valuable for many different reasons. He's got the name, and all you got to do is get somebody to give you something for him that's better than what you got. But again, if he's hot, why not, right?
Okay, so I could buy that, and unfortunately, all my information just with my wife on. It's on my
okay. I got another one. I'll keep going.
Is on it, so
okay, ahead. I'll keep going. Owned in 14.9% of leagues, a catcher and an outfielder from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Henry Davis. He now has consistent playing time. Since the All-Star game in this 3-game series they just played, he's batting .444, scoring 4 points, 7 points, and 7 points against the San Francisco Giants. We've seen Pittsburgh produce some valuable fantasy guys over the season for different amounts of time, for different stretches of time. Henry Davis is that guy now, and being eligible catcher sure helps out your fantasy team a lot.
It does.
Guy playing every day.
Yeah, he's a guy that I have been excited about, and he kind of cools down a little bit just to, when I try to get excited. But he's a guy, certainly. I like him. He's been on my roster before. Catcher, outfielder, as you mentioned. And you got to like that. And that's the only reason why Melendez is on as many rosters as he is.
Yes.
And so if he could do what Melendez did last year, then we've really got something to talk about here.
Agreed. And then I'll give you another one. 0.6% owned. A little different than Giancarlo Stanton at 52% and Henry Davis at 14%. He's a starting pitcher. He's also listed as a relief pitcher. But for the Tampa Bay Rays, Ryan Yarbrough, returning from injury, he went 6 innings with a 1.50 ERA, 5 Ks versus Cleveland. His next start is Wednesday against Detroit. I like Tampa Bay pitchers, especially when they're healthy. His start before his injury was a good one, too. 5.2 innings, one earned run in that one as well. Ryan Yarborough is a guy I love when healthy. Right now he's healthy. Playing Detroit Wednesday is going to be a great matchup for him as well. At 0.6% owned, he's available in your league. Go out and get Ryan Yarborough.
Okay, I like that a lot. And hang on one second. I will get my instrument back. Hold on.
A reminder, you can go to bellyupfantasysports.com, get all the latest fantasy news there. Again, a lot of Major League Baseball stuff going on right now, a lot of NFL stuff coming out. If you're getting ready for your drafts, getting your prep going, you need to go to bellyupfantasysports.com, read the articles, gain the advice. There's some great fantasy football shows out there as well through the Belly Up Fantasy world. A great place to go. If you're hungry, you need to go to righteousfelon.com. You go to righteousfelon.com, use code BELLYUP. You get 15% off your purchase and some really good jerky to go with it as well. And I also now have Sports Stove apparel available, and you can find that through our social media pages. We got the links for you there as well.
All right, so I am back. And so another guy that's at 33% owned, so he may not be as available, and he's a guy at playing for the Padres, and Ha-Sung Kim.
Oh, yeah.
Plays second, third, shortstop, and this is what he's done. 2 for 4 with the run scored, 3 for 5. He was 2 for 5 today with a homer and 2 runs scored. He had a stolen base this week. He had 2, 1, 3, 4, 7 fantasy points. And so he's a guy who's playing now. You figure that he wouldn't be playing all the time with all the stars they have, but he's on the field. I like him, and I actually had him on my team. He doesn't play tomorrow, so I dropped him. But if you can hold off and add him for Tuesday, go ahead and do that because he plays so many positions.
He's a great guy to have as a utility guy if you have a bench spot where you keep an offensive player. He's a good one to have. My only concern with him is always playing time, but he gets pretty consistent playing time. And you're right, great versatility and usually really good production, even hitting lower in the order. Last year, he hit higher in the order at different times of the season. But nonetheless, I love that pickup as well.
Okay, so I'm going to switch the pitcher on this one. And I can't believe I'm talking about a Detroit Tiger. All right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Tarek Skubal.
Yeah.
Is a guy who pitches for, and he was injured most of the first half, came back. He started 2 games before the All-Star break and didn't allow a run in either of those games, gave up just 2 hits in 8 innings with 11 strikeouts. And so the kicker is Tuesday at Kansas City Royals. So that
I like that one.
Yeah, so and he's at 26% owned, so or rostered, I guess is the correct word to say nowadays. But he's rostered in 26% of leagues, so if he's available, get him for Tuesday's start. Doesn't get much easier than the Kansas City Royals right now.
I agree 100%. All right, let's go to drops. I'll get us started with drops. And I'm going to go pitching first. 52.5% owned from the Miami Marlins, Braxton Garrett. His last 3 games have shown decline against St. Louis, Philly, and Baltimore with ERAs of 4.76, 5.40, and then against Baltimore, 7.71. Those are ones you just can't survive, especially as we get closer to the fantasy playoffs. Those are guys you just can't hang on to at this point. Go out and find you another guy. He should be a streamer. The right matchup, put him in. The wrong matchup, you got to let him go. So I have Braxton Garrett as a drop this week.
Okay, and that hurts my soul because I have him. So, but I agree with you on that. He has not pitched well, and so you got to let him go. And a guy that I'm going to let go, All-Star this past year. And matter of fact, he was the NL All-Star MVP.
Oh my!
I'm talking about Elias Diaz.
Oh yeah,
that home run that he hit in the All-Star game is the only one he has. Right? Because all right, so in his last 6 games, 1 for 4, 0 for 1, 1 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 2. No homers, no RBIs, no runs scored. And 0, 0, -1, 1, 0, -1 fantasy points. And that because they played, like we just mentioned, the Yankees at home.
Yeah.
And if he comes out and has no hits whatsoever, that is a major failure. They play Houston in 2 games this week before they hit the road. And we all know the Colorado Rocky hitters have negative fantasy appeal once they get on the road. And he's not hitting even at home. So go ahead and enjoy your moment in the sun that you had in Seattle, and put your, the trophy up on the mantle and enjoy it. Because other than that, you got no appeal whatsoever.
Nothing there.
Nothing there. Nothing, nobody's home but the trophy.
It's time for me to get on to my Reds bashing.
Okay.
My next 2 guys are Cincinnati Reds. We'll start you off with Matt McLain, shortstop and second baseman. He had a good start to the year. He's been much better than expected. Most people didn't even know who he was. 41% owned still currently. He's got no home runs in his last 12 games. 2 RBIs in the last 12 games. 3 stolen bases in the last 12 games. 18 strikeouts in the last 12 games. Matt McLain has become a liability on your fantasy team.
Now you're hurting me again because he's on my fantasy team as well. So
I think he's at that point now, right, Kev? I mean, I just feel like he's at that point now.
Been high on him.
Yeah,
but now
he's been good. He's done a lot of good this year, but it's been a rough go now, and it's been long enough where I think it's time to let him go and move on to somebody else.
Okay, I agree with that 100%, even though I don't want to. And a drop I have is on the Houston Astros pitcher at 59.3% rostered, and that's Hunter Brown that I'm speaking of right here. And you wouldn't have thought so because against the Dodgers on the road, no less, 1-1, 3 hits, struck out 7, walked 2. You think, woo, this guy's arrived. Well, since then, against Texas, 4 innings, they gave up 10 hits, no fantasy points. Against Seattle, 5 runs on 8 hits and just 3 innings with 3 walks, -6 fantasy points. And worst of all, on Tuesday, he is the starting pitcher in Colorado. You want nothing to do with starting pitchers in Colorado.
Right.
Nothing. And I don't see, if you did happen to drop him, somebody's going to swoop in and get him. So go ahead. You don't want anything to do with him this week. Nothing.
Agreed.
So go ahead, drop him, and find yourself a better starting pitcher than Hunter Brown this week.
I like it. My last one for the week is 22.8% owned. Again, Cincinnati Red outfielder TJ Friedl. They played 6 games against Milwaukee, 6 in Milwaukee, 3 in Milwaukee before the break, 3 in Cincinnati after the break. In those 2 series, he went 3 for 22, 7 strikeouts, 0 fantasy points, 0 home runs, 0 RBIs, 0 stolen bases. This is a kid I really liked for Cincinnati. Felt like he had value because of how low he was rostered. At this point, again, I think there's still Reds out there who are valuable, although I tried to tell you for the last several weeks, it's going to diminish over the next couple of weeks. TJ Friedl's a guy I cannot afford to have on my team. I don't think you can either. It's time to cut him loose.
Okay, so I agree with that 100% as well. My last guy is a guy who, it's kind of like you're bouncing around on your, outside with the kids on the, what do you call that? Trampoline. Thank you very much. All right. Because I was high on him before the season began. I thought, okay, he's a guy who can do some things. Well, he stumbled over his own feet to come out of the gate. Don't want anything to do with him. Then he comes out, right, at the beginning of June, and 2 starts, he had 22 and 15 fantasy points. People climb back on the train. Right? You're thinking you're going to be like Tom Cruise. You've seen the scenes of that movie where, the train is, rocketing down the road. Well, since then, he has 3 points, 2 points, -2 points, -13 fantasy points.
Yikes.
That's Michael Kopech that I'm talking about, of the Chicago White Sox. And of all these players that the White Sox could trade, I'm sure they would love to package him, but no one's going to want him. No, on real or fantasy teams, Michael Kopech, don't put him on your team. Don't have anything to do with him. Even though he pitches against the Mets on Thursday, I want nothing whatever to do with Michael Kopech of the Chicago White Sox.
And I'll tell you about this show. We don't lie about the things that we said in the past. We know you're not going to go back 30 episodes and check out our preseason rankings. But, yeah, Kevin, you're right. Kopech was a guy you were really high on. I think you even had him as a sleeper.
Yeah, to my maybe eternal regret. I was
what's worse than that, Kevin, is I was high on the White Sox as a whole. So you were high on a player. I was high on the team. So we both take an L when it comes to White Sox at this point.
Big L. And fortunately, that has not translated over to Mr. Robert, because he is still bashing the ball. He's on 2 fantasy teams of mine. Very happy to have him. So don't pay any attention to your teammates, Mr. Robert, or however you pronounce your last name. And he had a scaring incident where during the home run derby he felt something, I guess, tender up or seize up or whatever it was, and he didn't play in the game. And they were like, oh no, but he's back in the lineup and swinging the bat, so
he's good to go.
Other than that, the White Sox have no reason to celebrate. Hopefully they didn't celebrate on the 4th of July because they didn't have anything to celebrate.
Ouch. All right. Tell us about, we're going to still talk about our league in just a moment. But before we get to that, tell us about your articles, what's coming out on bellyupfantasysports.com.
Okay. So on Friday, and I didn't, use any of my predictions that I used from that article, but I did write a second half fantasy preview, and that's available on the Belly Up Fantasy website right now. I discussed Shohei Ohtani. We didn't talk about this here yet. I don't see him going anywhere right now. You'll have to read the article. I don't want to get too deep into that, but so he's on there. Dylan Cease is on there. A lot of other players that I predict what might happen with them in the second half. So you definitely want to get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website, check that article. And if you missed out on the show this morning, Chase and I discussed draft strategies for fantasy football and slow drafts, which is the rage all over the United States of America today.
Yeah.
And something that I had never encountered before. I was in Belly Up, never before.
And so, just correct me if I'm wrong, but that is where it's over days at a time, where there's no time limit.
You've got 8 hours in between picks. And doesn't mean you have to take that long when we get into all that. So if you missed out on an episode, you want to definitely get over, because it's on Facebook, it's on YouTube, it's on Twitter. Get over there, check out that article. As camps open in this week, and so football is kind of at a standstill, but it's going to be going down the rails real soon. So check over there. Check that article out. We talk about all kinds of draft strategies and the news that's going on right now. So you definitely want to check out that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an intriguing idea for sure. I got 3 articles I want to get out. I have no idea if I'm going to get them out or not. The power rankings did drop yesterday on bellyupsports.com. I want to do a buyers and a sellers article. And then I've got something else I'd like to work on, but I'm holding off for right now. I got to find the time to do it. But anyways, I'd like to get a fantasy article out this week, but we'll see if it happens. In our league right now, we're coming up. Myself, Kevin, both had really good weeks or matchups this week. Outside of that, right now we've got a tie between a 1-12 team and a 6-7 team. They're tied at 380 as we currently sit. Drew Childs and Nathan Nguyen. Man, I'm rooting for Nathan. He needs a win. It's been a while.
He does. He definitely needs a
win. Mike Brown, the Belly Up co-founder, is going to take down Nick Macaronis this week. So they're tied at 6-7. So Mike goes to 7-7, and Nick drops to 6-8. And then Dad, 3-game losing streak now. He loses to Chase this week. A rough week, but Dad told me, he said, you can trash me all you want tonight, but my pitchers are coming back next week. They've been injured. My 2 pitchers are coming back, and that's the strength of my team. I'll be back in the flow of things. So there's that. And then also today is my dad's birthday. So happy birthday
I
to
saw
Dad.
that, and so happy birthday to him if he's watching this show. And I don't know if he told you, but he reached out to me
He
about
did.
some information about some fantasy hockey, which I know less about that than other sports. I have done it, and I did respond to him, back to him.
Yeah.
So hopefully get something useful out of that.
Yeah.
And I
And
was glad to hear from him.
Kevin loves to correspond with people as well.
That's
But yeah,
right.
Dad reached out. He said, "Does Kevin do fantasy hockey?" I said, "I think he does." And
Yeah,
and he
only
said,
have
"Can I have
one
his
hockey,
email?" So
only one fantasy hockey league, that I'm in,
yeah,
and I just do. No one else I know does one, so I just get on there and did pretty well
yeah.
in it. So maybe I know what
Man,
I'm
I
talking about.
struggle. So what I do, this is all bonus material now. It's just free. No one's
Okay,
paying
yep.
for this. But
That's why bonus right here.
fantasy sports have been a way for me to get involved in things I didn't know about. Now, football has always been I keep up with football really well. Baseball, many years ago, I really wasn't watching baseball. I wasn't really paying attention to baseball. We had minor league and where I was, and so I'd go watch those games. But as far as Major League Baseball goes, I wasn't into. This was probably, I would say, a good night, almost 20 years ago now. And so it's just I wanted to get into it again, get back into baseball. As a kid, I did the trading cards and all that kind of stuff. And the easiest way to get
Oh
into a
yeah,
sport is
absolutely. I did as well. I got
yeah,
some right back there. What's supposed to be our sunroom. Is
yeah,
it a sunroom?
yeah, sure.
It's got all my memorabilia in there. So yeah, I've got all kinds of baseball cards back there.
Yeah. So the way that I get into sports is fantasy. So if I ever wanted to get into hockey, fantasy is the way I would go.
Yeah.
And because you just learn so many players and so many things
Right.
about the game
And
by
the
getting
good thing
involved.
about fantasy hockey is you don't have to try and pronounce these guys' names,
Yeah.
which would be a problem with a lot
That'd
of
be
them.
a huge problem for sure.
Yeah,
But
the announcers ought to get paid more than they get paid just because they can pronounce these guys' names.
yeah, they've got nicknames for them all. But happy birthday to Dad. We always
That's
appreciate
right.
you tuning in. Dad listens every Monday, pulls up the podcast while he's at work, and I always appreciate him tuning in and his support of the program. He's been on the program, of course, as well. But a 3-game losing streak, he's still a fraud, and we'll see if he can shake out of it next week as well. So as it currently sits in our league, Kevin will take over the number 1 spot in the league. He'll be 12-2. Dad will be 11-3. I'm in 3rd place at 8-6, followed by
About 700
Drew.
people, isn't it right?
Yeah, Drew Childs and Chase will both be at 7-7, and then it drops from there. Oh, and Mike Brown, excuse me, and then Nick is at 6-8, and Dan D'Amico, the defending champ, 6-8. And Nathan Nguyen bringing up the rear at, we'll see if he wins this week or not. And then Brennan Myers, by the way, Reds fan, just like the Reds, falling. So he'll be at 5-9 this week as well. We'll get into our new matchups next week and excited about that. All right. Thank you all for tuning in today.
That's right.
Go to
We always appreciate the
bellyupfantasysports.com.
and their comments and
Yes.
everything.
Yeah, 100%. We do appreciate it. And again, I'll get that fixed. So don't stop watching the show because of the loud ringing noise.
Please don't, let that get in the way of your. Can we say enjoyment? Can we say that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, enjoying our show and learning something from it, hopefully, and we're happy to be up here and giving some help to people. That's what we do it for, and if we make any money out of it, that's just bonus pudding.
Yeah, icing on the cake,
on
right?
everything. So if we can help out anybody, that's what we want to do.
bellyupfantasysports.com, righteousfelon.com. Use code BELLYUP. Get 15% off your purchase. We'll be back next Sunday with more fantasy advice and MLB news. Wednesday night, me and Dad will be going through the ACC football conference, previewing that. We did the Big 12 last week.
Going to win. So
who is?
I can give you Clemson.
Oh, I don't want to give it away, but I'm with you. And then Thursday night at 8 p.m., I'll be live previewing EKU's defensive backs, the cornerbacks, and safeties. We'll have position coaches and players on the program course, the audio will drop of that Friday morning as well. So a lot going on in the world of the Sports Stove podcast.
That's
Kevin's around every Sunday on the fantasy football shows in the mornings, fantasy baseball show at night. You can catch him a lot of other places, of course, his articles as well. Thank you for tuning in today's edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
Everybody have a great week.